Okay, this one, oh, I don't know how deep I'm going to go. First of all, hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree. Please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love y'all. Scooby Doo. My retrospectives, if you've watched any of these videos, are not really a history of the thing. It's kind of sort of a little bit of a timeline interspersed with my personal experiences. I'm not using clips, copyrighted clips. I'm not going to try to argue fair use. I see too many channels that have that headache. I don't need it. And I don't bother to edit my videos because this is a hobby. It's not my job. I just do this for the fuck of it. I appreciate and am extremely grateful for the awesome people who watch my videos and don't leave shitty comments. But I would still like more, positive comments, for the algorithm. I cannot, like most people, I would argue, my age or younger, pinpoint my first memory of Scooby-Doo. I can't because I was born in 1982. Scooby-Doo was created in the 60s. In my universe, in my world, in my lifetime, he's always existed. He's always been on TV. It's always been Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Or the new Scooby-Doo movies, or new Scooby-Doo Adventures, or a pup named Scooby-Doo, or something. 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. There's always been something Scooby-Doo on the TV. Somewhere out there in the ether. Direct-to-video. Movies and specials. Animated specials. Live-action movies here and there. Starting in 2002. So let's talk about my experiences with Scooby-Doo. Like I said, I cannot trace my earliest memory of Scooby-Doo because he's always been there. I was probably watching Scooby-Doo when I was 2 years old. For all I know. But I do remember watching Scooby-Doo on Sunday mornings, not Saturday mornings. It was not a Saturday morning cartoon. Saturday morning cartoons were Snorks and, Smurfs and Transformers and G.I. Joe. Sunday morning cartoons were the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons that were being shown in syndication on reruns. Scooby-Doo, what's his name? The Cat and the Mouse, what are they? What's the Cat and Mouse called? Tom and Jerry, there it is. Or shit like that, And because 1986, 7, 8, when I was old enough to pay attention to Scooby-Doo or what's on TV, Scooby-Doo had already had multiple iterations by this point. So, one week you might be watching Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? The next week it might be Scooby and Scrappy-Doo. The next week something else, and the next week something else, etc., etc. It was just like a never-ending parade of shit. Whereas my dad, because he was a young boy, 11, 12 years old when Scooby-Doo hit the television screen, he grew up with Scooby-Doo. And my dad had a habit, for better or worse, of introducing me to the stuff he grew up with. So he would sit us down, me and my sisters, to watch cartoons as a family, and we would watch, the Hanna-Barbera stuff, Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, etc. Because that's what was playing, and that's what he liked. Now, I initially, when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, in that span, I couldn't care less about Scooby-Doo. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't watch it. I avoided it when I could, watched it when I was forced to, and then left it out of my brain whenever I was given the opportunity to. I had no interest in Scooby-Doo. I mean, I watched it because it was on, But if there was anything else to watch, I'd watch that instead of Scooby Doo. The only time I watched Scooby Doo when there was literally nothing else to watch, or when my dad made me. So, for the first decade of my life, I was not a fan of Scooby Doo. Starting around 10, 11, 12, cartoons were changing. Now we were getting stuff like X-Men, the animated series, Spider-Man, Batman, the animated series, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Cartoons were getting more mature, more edgier. Scooby-Doo went the opposite route. They went the baby route, the Muppet Babies route. Now it was a pup named Scooby-Doo instead of whatever. Anyways, so I was like, okay, this is different. And so I actually liked a pup named Scooby-Doo, very specifically because it was different. Now remember, I've repeatedly mentioned multiple times, and pissed people off saying it a little too harshly a few times, I'm not, by and large, a tremendous fan of animation. Cartoons are not my go-to thing. I don't hate them, I just don't love them. So, there are not a lot of cartoons that entered my world. There were a lot of cartoons I watched, because that was what was on the TV, until it was time to go play Nintendo, and then I did that for the rest of the day. And then I played Nintendo until it was time to play Sega, and then so on and so forth. Because, I'm a 90s kid. Well, Scooby-Doo was still out there, doing his thing in the 90s. He was just doing it where I wasn't interested. Once a pup named Scooby-Doo ran its course, that's all she wrote. I was no longer had any interest in Scooby-Doo whatsoever. I didn't read the comics, didn't collect the toys, didn't watch the cartoon, never rented the videotapes. I had zero interest in Scooby-Doo as a character, as a franchise, or as a premise. I don't love mysteries, but I prefer horror. Scooby-Doo, especially Scooby-Doo Where Are You, and some of the later iterations, 13 Ghosts and on, kinda, sorta, almost have a horror aesthetic, but they're not horror. They do kind of sometimes appeal to horror fans. It just didn't really appeal to me all that much. Now, late 90s, 96, 7, 98, I got really balls deep into MTV, which introduced me to Daria, an adult, teenage-oriented, mature cartoon I could watch, guilt-free, and still enjoy. Post-90s, The Simpsons was still out there, but we don't talk about The Simpsons. I try not to, anyways. There were new cartoons coming on the scene. Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill, Ren and Stimpy, and later we would get, Family Guy and Futurama, but that wasn't really for me either, initially. I really had no interest in this stuff. In 1999, when I was 16 years old, I saw Star Wars The Phantom Menace, and in my 16-year-old teenage brain, I thought it was the greatest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Up to that point, nothing was going to top The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace was Star Wars, but it was a little goofier than I was used to. Now, I cannot put a pin in what I'm going to enjoy and what I'm going to not enjoy, because I'm very unpredictable. There are movies that check all the boxes. By all rights, I should love them, and yet I don't. There are movies that check none of the boxes. I should hate them, and yet they're the greatest thing I've ever seen. I'm a human, you know. So in 2002, we'd already seen some cartoons, Hanna-Barbera cartoons, turned into live-action movies and things of that sort. Dennis the Menace, they're not all Hanna-Barbera, but Dennis the Menace, the Flintstones, Casper, you know. There was a handful of those in the 90s, but they weren't great. The Flintstones was probably the best of the bunch. Casper is... I enjoy it, but I recognize it's not a good movie, but I still like it. But that's, you know, that's another video for another day. Now, 2002. Well, I'm born in 82, so now I'm 20 years old. Starting in 2001, I had got a heavy dose of nostalgia and started collecting Transformers action figures from my childhood and the new current at the time Transformers from, you know, 2001 car robots, robots in the skies. I was getting really bitten by the nostalgia bug. I was watching a lot of that 70s show, which had some nostalgia thrown into it. I got a GameCube, and I was playing a lot of Nintendo. I had a Game Boy Advance at the time. I was playing, and I was, you know, I was starting to emulate at this time NES and SNES. So I was revisiting Super Mario Brothers, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong Country, you know, the Mega Man games, Castlevania, etc. So nostalgia was bubbling up inside me. And so in 2002, they released the live-action Scooby Doo movie. And at first, I shrugged it off. I was like, oh my god, it's going to be like those other rubbish movies, you know, like Dennis the Menace or fucking whatever. I was like, y'all missed the boat. That craze is past tense, let's just get over it. However, as I was reevaluating other things from my childhood, Transformers, Ninja Turtles, Nintendo, there was a twinge of nostalgia when I rented the Scooby Doo videotape. Not by choice, but because my mom wanted to watch it and she thought the family would enjoy it, and I was still living at home at the time. So me and my mom and my dad and my sisters all watched the 2002 live-action Scooby Doo movie. And I actually enjoyed it. It was a fun movie. And I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that. So I got bit by the nostalgia bug. Now, it was just enough to get me to buy a handful of Scooby Doo comic books sprinkled out over the years, and buy a handful of the 50th anniversary Walmart exclusive Scooby Doo action figures from a few years ago. And that was it. Beyond that, I got the toys, I got a few comics. I'll go back and rewatch the 2002 movie from time to time. I'm still not all in on Scooby Doo. I can appreciate what it did for animation and Hanna-Barbera and kids' cartoons and programming and things like that. And I can kind of sort of respect to a smaller degree some of, thank you, the characters and tropes, I guess. But like all other cartoons, by and large, I'm not a fan. So, 42 years old, the most I've experienced of Scooby Doo is the 2002 movie, that 1.5 seasons of a pup, and a couple of comics and some action figures. That's it. I am not the target audience for this franchise.